so many people were genre collectors. They would be into the rockabilly or mostly the vocal group stuff, as I said before, or maybe the blues. But it's like, man, what about the polka records on Fortune? Even they're cool, you know? And they recorded all this gypsy music that no one, and you know, when we wrote the gypsy chapter, I realized when I was researching, well, these are the first Romanian gypsy, or Hungarian rather, excuse me, gypsy records of this kind of music that ever came out in the United States. The first albums, they put them out, they recorded them. So we kept on joking, we should do a book about Fortune Records, it's just so cool. And then finally Miriam, after at one of the Ponderosa Stomp New York curated things that the Ponderosa Stomp did, festival that I was involved in New Orleans, with my friend Ira Padnos. We were at this barbecue like the night before, and we were about to, you know, go do the thing the next day or whatever. And we were joking about it again, and she just said, "You guys need to do a book. You need to do it. Don't even joke about it. You just need to do it." And then Billy emailed me the next week and was like, "I'm really excited about the prospect," and it just started rolling from there. So we'd already had, it's kind of like we were preparing, but we didn't know it. You know what I mean? But I did, you know, both of us I know thought, boy, wouldn't it be cool if there was something like that out there. Well, once we started, we were like, okay, how do we want to do this? And it started as, you know, okay, we're going to write a history of Fortune Records, and we're going to try to make it as accessible as we can. We're going to talk to everybody we can, whatever. But then it immediately became like, once we scratched the surface, okay, wait, this is going to be a history of Detroit. The essence of the Detroit music that we know and love, of basically I don't want to say all genres, but damn close, and quite a few of the artists that we always, you know, were obsessed with, told through the prism of Fortune Records. Because everyone crossed the threshold at some point, and every cool story that we wanted to tell seemed to be related. You know, so Johnny Powers on Fox, long blonde hair, rose red lips. It's like we could tell that story. And there, not only did he make a Fortune record, but you know, the other guys in his band later, you know, him and his whole band from that session went later on and started a studio that basically, like, you know, not only recorded a whole bunch of Fortune country people, but essentially pioneered the polka album craze in Detroit, which is something that somehow Jack and Deborah never took advantage of. But, you know, it was like a story that needed to be told, you know? And so we were able to just basically go on a ton of tangents in this book, but then bring it all back to the ground. So it's not completely, it would be easy to get off track, but, and you know, that was something that I felt, you know, one of the reasons we felt that it was important to do this and to tell these side stories is that it was like the one thing they had in common, besides the fact that they were all so cool, you know, Danny Zella, Al Allen, Boots Gilbert, I mean, the list goes on, was that they hadn't been told anywhere. And we thought, well, gosh, like, we need to tell these stories in this book. We have a responsibility to do it. So that's another reason that it ended up being so big. But, you know, we basically wanted it to be a calling card and a love letter to Detroit. And that's what the title of Beck did an interview with me. It was the most extensive interview that anybody's ever done with me, not only about my writing, but about my music, my bands, my brother and me, our bands, the whole history of all of it, you know, from my garage band, the Royal Pendletons, to, you know, the Hurtt brothers, the Haunted Hearts, whatever, in the first luncheonette. And she called it a love letter to Detroit, because the occasion was the book coming out. And that's really, in essence, what this book, you know, what this book is. And the subtitle is The Myths and Mysteries of Detroit's Fortune Records. And the reason that we called it, the reason that we thought it was important to put that in there was because there are so many myths that we were trying to debunk about Fortune Records, including the legendary dirt floor, which we still were never really able to confirm that there wasn't a dirt floor at Fortune, you know? Some people swore there was. Sheldon, the son of Jack and Devora, was always pissed off about that, you know, even though he's definitely never tried to sugarcoat anything about the cinder block 18 by 40 building that basically had almost no heat, and a ton of holes in the walls, and just all kinds of issues, you know. But he was very offended by that. You know, 5 minutes? Okay, no problem. I joked to Deke, well, we're not going to have enough time to talk about, or what did I say? We're not going to, boy, it's going to be hard to fill that time with all the talking we're not going to do. But yeah, I mean, a few points. I mean, I wanted to, I think the main point that that I came upon, I've always loved music and artists, you know, basically music that was produced from a female or feminine perspective. And I think that, you know, from Moon Records in Memphis, Cordell Jackson's label, Ram Records in Shreveport, Myra Smith, these women were doing this stuff when it was like, you know, I mean, we don't have to go into it. It would be hard enough now, but back then it was like just unheard of. I mean, they were just complete trailblazers, and they didn't think about it, they just did it, you know. But there's always, I want to say there's always a different touch when, you know, when it's a man or a woman in control. Now, Devora was basically the hands-on deal. She was producing all the records. I mean, Jack was in a support role, you know, he was promoting, he was doing whatever, and he did a few things, but she was the one that, you know, one of the artists said, "You didn't touch those. You took your life in your hands if you touched those dials." You know, because she, you know, her prized Ampex tape machine. You know, and she was writing a lot of the songs and finding a lot of the artists. And the artists were crossing the threshold. I mean, that was really how it happened. I feel like it would have been different. I feel like Devora Brown was such a visionary in the sense that she was so eccentric that a lot of these artists ended up recording here would have never recorded for anybody else because nobody else would have recorded them. Nobody in Detroit, at least. Earl and Joyce Songer, a hillbilly duo from West Virginia, a perfect example. Just fantastic records, and they made more records than any hillbilly artist on the label in the early years, but they were so raw and so cool. And I just feel like, I don't think they could have, I mean, later they did record for Imperial and Coral based on the success of the Fortune records, but I just don't think that anybody else would have recorded them. So that's an example, and also a lot of the vocal groups, the blues guys, I mean, they were thinking outside the box.